Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors, episode 88.
Welcome to Life by Design, the podcast for chiropractors. Here's your host, Dr. Jamie Richards.
Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards. On today's episode, I brought on Mark Kaye. Mark is a radio show host. He's a podcaster. He's a showman. And that's what we talked about today is the importance of putting on a show. You can actually check out Mark's stuff at www.theyoushow.com, U as in you, Y-O-U. And we'll put that in the show notes for you guys. But we talked about the importance of a show, whether it's through your podcast, whether it's through your social media. Every interaction you have with a patient or an audience really is about creating a show. So I think you're going to get a ton out of today's episode. I know I did. I've gone back, looked at my notes already, and I know you will too. So enjoy today's episode of Life by Design for Chiropractors. Mark Kaye, welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors.
Jamie, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Let me tell our listeners, guys listening in, I'm excited to have Mark here today. You know me, I'm always searching and watching and consuming information. And I was popping around on, I think it was Facebook one day, and saw this crazy guy talking about you're not Gary Vee, and then being someone who actually enjoys some of Gary Vee's stuff. And I know lots of the Life by Design for Chiropractors followers, have listened in to Gary Vee and so on. And so I was intrigued. I thought, well, this is interesting. I want to hear what this guy has to say. And he started talking about the importance of a show. And what really struck me, and then I'll pass it off to you, Mark, to tell a bit of your story. But what struck me was I always thought of a show as something that was so organized and had to be perfect, being OCD compulsive in nature. And then what Mark said was it didn't have to be that way. You had to have showmanship built around whatever you were doing, podcast, online, and so on. So I thought, you know what? This is somebody I need to know more about. And long story short, I ended up in Mark's groups, and here he is on today's show. So Mark Kaye, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
Wow, that was a great introduction. I'm stealing most of that for the next time I'm on stage. No, for those of you that aren't familiar with me, I am a radio and TV host by nature. Well, not by nature, I guess by nurture. But I have for 20 years I've hosted morning radio shows. I have two shows right now. I have a daily talk show and I have a daily entertainment show here in Jacksonville, Florida, which is where I am. And I also created the first and only talk show to air on Snapchat, which is when I really started delving into social media broadcasting. And that took off, became pretty popular. Business Insider did a big piece on me, Yahoo and AOL. And I eventually, from that, people started wanting to know about what I do. And I became a speaker. And then it got to be a lot, traveling and doing radio shows and social media. So I took everything that I teach people when I travel and I consolidated into what you saw, which is the You Show, which is a way that people can learn from home and work from home as a speaker or as an entertainer. And I use the concept of a show, which is something I've done every single day of my life since I was 20 years old, to let people know that that's the best, really, and the only way to market yourself in this attention economy that we're all in this social media economy. And that Gary Vee ad, I made that ad, and now I had no idea that people were going to start referring to me this way, but now I'm the Gary Vee ad guy. And it proved my point, because I say if you put on a good enough show, people will remember you. They'll talk about you. You'll be branded. And I accidentally did the same thing to myself when I created that ad. So if your listeners have seen that ad, that's fantastic. If you haven't, just Google "You Are Not Gary Vee" and you'll get a good visual of what I look like.
Yeah, and it's worth doing that, guys, because again, that's the reason Mark is on our show, is because I saw that ad. And Mark, if you can explain, because what I really loved about that, you were talking about, I think it was your boss in radio, and that was, I guess, the trigger for you that brought it all together. And if you can share that story, I think the listeners are going to get a lot out of that.
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, the first thing about not being Gary Vee is, and you see this, there's a lot of people out there, and if you're not familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk, he is in the marketing industry or the social media industry. He's the Oprah. He's the end all be all. He's the ultimate, and he's also curses. He wears hoodies. He rides around in Ubers everywhere he goes. And he's a very colorful character. He's a loud New York guy, kind of short. And he's scary looking at times, but he's done a really effective job of branding himself and creating this image. And what I noticed is whenever I turned on a show or a podcast or saw an ad or went online, people were basically cursing and wearing hoodies and riding around in Ubers and yelling hustle. So, I stopped and I said, this is something that I can't be the only one that noticed this. So I basically made this video, this ad that tore into everybody and said, look, you're not Gary Vee. He's Gary Vee, you be you, and that kind of thing. Now, the concept of doing the show, Gary Vee started not as a social media expert. He sold wine. He sold wine in a basement in New Jersey because his dad owned a wine store. And way back when it took 30 minutes to download a video just to watch it, back when there was no Facebook, when there was no YouTube even, he was creating videos for the internet that sold wine. And he did it every day, and they were horrible, and they were rambling, but he sold a ton of wine. And that's what led him into this career as a social media expert. Similarly, when I was in Washington, D.C., one of my first big radio jobs, about, 15, maybe 20 years ago now, I worked for this guy. His name was Jeff, and Jeff White, really incredible guy, really great mind, fun-loving. He'd worked everywhere, New York and L.A., and he was in D.C., and he found me wherever I was. I even forget, but he brought me to D.C. to do this morning show. Loved him. He loved me. We had a great rapport. He became a great friend of mine. And back in the day, morning radio shows, nobody had their own studio. We all shared one. So we would be on the air from 6 a.m. to 10. And then at 10 o'clock, we'd have to leave and clean up all of our stuff. And then someone would come in and they'd broadcast from 10 to 2. And then at 2 o'clock, they would leave and someone else. And it was 24/7. Now, most of it's automated. And, where I work, I'm the only live body that works on the station anyway. So I pretty much have my own studio. But we would be hanging out, and I had a couple other people on my show. And Jeff would always want to hang out with us too, because, again, he loved the excitement. And we had the great, same personality. And the show was wrapping up, and the door opens, and instead of the girl who typically did the show after us, her name was KT. She was off. She was sick, I think, or her daughter was sick or something. It doesn't matter. She wasn't there. So she called in another friend of ours, a guy named Anthony. And Anthony walks in, and I wasn't expecting to see him. And I looked at him, I said, hey, what's going on? How you doing? And he goes, I'm great. I go, what are you doing here? And he said, I'm here to do the midday shift. And all of a sudden, my boss, Jeff, who was like hanging out in the studio, yucking it up and laughing and having a good time, all of a sudden he just goes sour, like stone cold. And he looks at Anthony, and all the joy had just been drained out of his body. And he looks at Anthony, he goes, what did you just say? And of course, now the rest of it, there's 4 of us on the show, and we all realize that there's a mood change. So we're all really quiet, and we kind of look back at Anthony, and Anthony realizes it too. And he looks back at my boss and says, I'm here to do the midday shift. And then that's when all hell broke loose. And our boss, and I never see him. I mean, I rarely saw him get angry. Never. He goes, a shift? He said, you think that's what you think you're here to do a shift? We pay you to do a shift. Is that what you're telling me? You're telling me this is what, a toaster factory? You're here to put toasters together and clock in and clock out, and that's it. You're here to do a shift. Let me tell you something. There are 2.5 million people in our nation's capital right now driving to work. They are stuck in cars. They are stuck in traffic. They are going to spend the next 8 hours of their lives locked in a cubicle, talking to people they hate, working for someone that doesn't respect them, making less money than they deserve, all so they can go home, spend an hour with their kids, when really what they want to do is tell everyone to go stick it and retire to a beach somewhere. Those are the people you're talking to. You really think that when those people turn on the radio, they want to listen to somebody doing a shift? And then, like, I got goosebumps. I was like, I want to do it. And he goes, you're here to do a show. You need to put on a show. And if you can't put on a show, we'll find someone who will. And wow. He slams the door and leaves. And we're all quiet and we're looking at everybody. And so I then turn to Anthony and I grab my stuff and I go, have a good show. And I walk out the door. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, he's exactly right. I mean, in what we're doing, radio broadcasters, TV broadcasters, and now social media broadcasters, your job is escapism. Yes, you can give people news information. Yes, you can enlighten them and inform them, but you've got to lift them out of their lives for a minute. You've got to emotionally connect with them in some way, whether it's laughter or sadness or drama or adrenaline or hope. But that's the ability that we all have as showmakers, and it's also the duty that we have. And that was when I really learned it. That's when it drove it home for me, and I've taken that lesson throughout the rest of my life.
Wow. Yeah, it's still funny listening to it again. I laughed out loud when you were telling the story. I could imagine how that stuck with you. And obviously seeing your work and your material and watching your content, I can see how that's now embedded in everything you do. And it started making me think about our listeners and people who are involved in Life by Design. And if you think about our market in the sense, we're in a sense small business owners, entrepreneurs on some level or scale. What is it that when you look at what people are doing, I know you have people in your courses and you're training people. When you look at what they're doing when they come to you, what are the big mistakes they're making compared to what you envision as this gold standard, which we'll talk about in a second?
I'll tell you, the biggest mistake they're making is that they think there's some gold standard. and that's the biggest problem people have. And
there you go. I guess I'm making the mistake.
Yeah. And because of that, they don't do anything. I mean, the biggest mistake that I find people say is, and it's even before they join the course, they'll write to me and say, I don't have a show yet. And I go, that's your number one mistake. You've got to have a show. There's no way. I have on my website, I have a free video, and the free video, I'll give you the gist of it. Basically, there's a 3-step process to making money as a broadcaster. And we do it in the radio industry, and the radio industry has been doing it for over 100 years. And the TV industry jumped on it, and magazines and newspapers, and now vloggers and Instagram influencers. Everybody uses the same 3-step process to make money. And the first step in that process is to create content. Because unless you create content, you have nothing. You have nothing to draw people toward you. After you create content, you use that content to build your audience. And you keep creating content and you keep building the audience and you refine your content and you find out what your audience wants and likes and needs and relates to. And if they love it, you create more of it. If they hate it, you never do it again. And eventually you figure out what your audience needs, and then you sell it to them. So it's real. And if you look at TV networks or movie studios, they create content, they build an audience, and then they sell them stuff. And that's all we do on the radio. That's all we do on TV. That's all social media broadcasters do. And if the ones that do it really well make a lot of money at it. So the first step is always content creation. You can't do anything unless you do something.
So let's talk about that, because I think that becomes, as you said, that's the big problem for people is they don't have a show, they have no content. Where does somebody start with that? Is there some tips and strategies that you have as a starting point? Is it just simply do anything, or where does somebody get going?
Yeah, anything can be a show. And that's something that, that's always a big hurdle for me to overcome with people, is to explain to them that a show is something that's exciting and entertaining. It's not video. It's not a movie.
Right.
People think of shows they watch on TV, and those are just types of shows. But there are radio shows, which, are now podcasts like yours.
Right.
Email is a show, or should be a show.
Right.
If you look at your email inbox, it's even more crowded than your Facebook newsfeed. And the only way you're going to get somebody to pay attention to your message is if your email headline is a show, if your email body is a show. If people, I get people, I send emails constantly. I work with, I'm a Ben Settle. I don't know if you know Ben Settle, but I'm a student of his. And we have a very similar mentality, but I send daily emails to my list, sometimes 2 or 3 days a week.
Yep.
And people will write me back and say, your emails are the only ones I open, or I see your name in my inbox and I get excited. And that excites me because it means I've taken something that people dread, spam basically is what it is. And they're excited to read it. And there's a sales message embedded in everything because, again, it's creating content, building an audience, and then selling them something. So every email that I send that is good and has information and makes them laugh, builds that rapport. And of course, every email I send has a link to a product. And that's a key ingredient to showbiz, because it's show business, and so you've got to make sure you've got the business part in there too.
Yeah, actually, I was just going to make comment of that. I'm the same way. There's only so many emails that I look forward to opening. There's some obviously in running all the different business components that have to be open, and there's things that need to get done. But it's true. You do send emails every day. I will attest to that. And number 2, I do open and read almost every single one of your emails. In fact, your emails are one of the few. I've got a handful of emails, usually yours, Dean Jackson, Dan Kennedy. I've got some ones there that are standard. Even if I can't read it that day, I bank it for the next day or the next day, but I don't delete your emails unless I've read them. So for those guys listening in, get on Mark's list. I'll show you where to go after, guys, in the show notes, and you can check it out. But I like what you said there, Mark. And I think that's a big hurdle for people, is just thinking I need to do this, really amazing curated content. I think a big thing right now is people doing all the the text underneath, or the Gary V, right? They're trying to follow the Gary V template where you're seeing the line go across and you're seeing the show go on. But I think it can be anything. And so if you're training somebody, and obviously without giving away all the trade secrets here, what's the template? I know you broke down content, audience, sell, but if I'm creating a show or I'm trying to apply showmanship to an email, to a podcast, is there a template that you can walk people through to help them start to structure this?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I always tell people is, and this is different than what anyone else will tell you. The first thing I tell people is know what you're selling. Again, I come from a very, in the radio industry, and really in any broadcast industry, people think that the content comes first. It doesn't. Without the money, there's no content. Right. So everything's based on the product, and that's business. I mean, we're in a capitalist society.
Sure, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, if you know what you're trying to sell, it makes the rest of it a lot easier, because then you know what to talk about, who to talk to, that kind of thing. Now, the other thing is you need to create a show that makes you comfortable. If your show is a chore or uncomfortable or frustrating, or if there's too many roadblocks for you to really continue with it and be successful at it, then you can't do it. It's got to be structured around you. That's why I call my new endeavor the You Show, because it's your show. And there's an old saying, Oprah would always say, if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. Well, when it comes to your show, your mom, everybody's mama. So if you're not happy, people aren't going to want to watch. No one wants to watch somebody who's miserable or listen to somebody who's miserable. And people tell me all the time, hey, I don't like the way I look on video. What do I do? And I go, don't do video. And they go, all right, what should I go do? A podcast? And then people say, well, I don't like the way I sound. What should I do? I go, well, don't do a podcast. Do an email. Do a blog. Right. Tweet, for crying out loud. And there's some form of communication that's going to be right for you. So adopt it. Now I have people that love seeing themselves on video and jump on, and it's no problem whatsoever. But you've just got to realize that as long as you're comfortable and happy, and you're relaying something, you're relaying that through your show. And again, the other thing that people always have a problem with, or that they not that they have a problem with, but they I guess mistake, is when I say entertainment, I don't mean comedy, because people will come to me and say, I'm not funny like you. And I always say, well, nobody's funny like me. No, I'm just kidding. But I go, no, that's okay. You don't have to be funny. In fact, the number one shows on television are not comedies. They're all dramas. They're all, reality TV shows. They're all the Real Housewives of this and that. And people love drama even more. The number one movie at the box office this week was a horror film. People want to be scared. They love roller coasters. There's nothing funny about a roller coaster. You think you're going to die for 60 seconds. So entertainment comes in many different forms. You can make people laugh. You can make people cry. You can make people feel guilty. You can make people feel enlightened. You can do whatever. You can scare the dickens out of people. Whatever you want to do, people love any kind of emotion. So you just need to draw out that emotion. And those would be my first two words. Make sure that you're comfortable with it, and then make sure that you can entertain people.
And so let's say we start to apply some of these. We're writing emails, we're doing podcasts. What are some of the initial, at least, without getting too complex here, what are the initial ways to market this, to get it to an audience? Is it as simple as just, putting a Facebook ad to it, driving it to an audience? What are some of the early tips that you would teach somebody who's new and fresh and a beginner in this world?
Yeah, I mean, a show, ideally your show can live organically, and then you could create, and when you create an ad, your ad should also be a separate show. Gotcha. Everything needs to stand out, but you can start it organically. You can start building a community. You can start, consistency is very important. And again, with consistency, don't mistake consistency for daily. A lot of people say to me, well, I can't do this every day. And I say, well, I didn't say every day. I said consistently. Consistently could be once a week. It could be once every 2 weeks. It could be the third Wednesday of every month that ends with the letter Y. But as long as it's consistent and at a regular time, that your audience can expect it, you'll be able to build it. So that that's the first thing. But having a show is going to be. It's going to be different for everybody, because your audience, for example, if you're a chiropractor, you don't care about people who may not be, looking for chiropractic help or suffering from some kind of pain. You may not even be looking for people outside of your city. A lot of people say, I don't think I can get 1 million people to watch me. Well, do you really need 1 million customers? No, you probably need a handful. 10, 12, how many are going to get you through? And you don't need people in Australia and New Zealand to connect with you. That'd be nice. But, if I were a chiropractor in Jacksonville, or if I were a real estate agent in Jacksonville, I would focus on Jacksonville. I would go out and, make sure that I'm connecting with those people. And it's a lot easier to do. We actually have a guy, Doc Tony is his name. He's a chiropractor.
Okay.
And he runs these TV ads. The guy's, he wears a cowboy hat for some reason. And he has a dog with him all the time.
Oh my God.
But his whole angle is he will pick you up in a limo with a cold drink.
What?
And that's the thing. He goes, I'm Doctor. I'll even pick you up in a limo with a cold drink and bring you to my office. And from that ad, the one thing that people always zero in on is the term cold drink. So whenever Doc Tony walks around in his cowboy hat, people go, Doc Tony, where's my cold drink? Because, he's branded himself. But if I ever needed a chiropractor, I'd be like, oh, I got to call Doc Tony. He's going to pick me up in a limo.
Hey, why wouldn't you, right?
Right. But that's Jacksonville. If I went to Orlando or Miami, nobody knows who that guy is. And it doesn't matter. He's killing it. He's the showman of chiropractors in this area. So.
Right. Yeah, I think that brings up a great point, and that I never even thought about that. Because, of course, with Life by Design for Chiropractors, our show, this is worldwide. With Life by Design for lay people, it's worldwide. But our listeners, guys, as Mark said, this is not something where you've got to create this huge production and get this out to millions of people. If you can dominate your local market and become that branded person who's speaking to people in a way that they're interested in, positioning yourself as the expert. So when it does come time for them to seek out services or follow your offer to a lead magnet or some other seminar or workshop, whatever you're doing, obviously, I think people are going to look to somebody who has that, that showmanship, as Mark's repeated over and over. So Mark, I can ask you a couple final questions here. I know you got to go and we've got another podcast in the queue here. Number one, I love the fact that in some way, shape or form, you're Canadian.
I am. I was in every way. I was born in Toronto, Canada. That's
right. So and Mark's dad lives not too far from the Life by Design Center. So it was just funny, small world. But a couple things. What is your favorite movie?
Oh, my favorite movie. Oh my gosh, there's so many. If you locked me in a room and said you can only have one movie for the rest of your life, probably it's so cliche, but The Shawshank Redemption is so great.
Oh, seen it so many times. Agreed.
Yeah, I know. And every time it's on TV, my wife and I stop and watch it. So, that's definitely one of them. I don't know. I also am a big Pulp Fiction fan. I could watch that over and over. It's that's such a tough.
I get it. So for me, it's Role Models. If you remember the Paul Rudd and.
I do. That's a really good one too. Yeah.
That's the one when I'm just sitting around and it's time to, clean the house and I just want to pop a movie on. My wife's probably listening thinking you never clean the house. But when I just want to sit there and watch a movie, I always put on Role Models. So last question. I'll direct people to the ushow.com. We'll put it in our show notes. This is
great.
A great opportunity to have you on the show. I'm glad we did this. What would you like to say to thousands of listeners to Life by Design for Chiropractors?
What you need to do is you need a show. That's basically the one thing I'm going to tell people. It doesn't matter if you're marketing, then you're putting on a show already. You need to make it better. You need to make sure that it's better than anyone else so that people can relate to it. Every business is show business. And so you've got to make your business a show. And in doing so, you'll make yourself a star. And that's basically it.
Love it. Mark, thanks for coming on the show.
Jamie, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Of course. And guys, thank you for listening to Life by Design for Chiropractors, the voice of reason in chiropractic.